A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Liolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Mamelodi Sundowns as I have a tactical feature focus of Rulani Mokwena's side. So when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side, then they've been doing very, very well. They've been very dominant, as we do know that they've pretty much already wrapped up the league. They just need a couple more points, doing very well within the Nedbank Cup. And then also then when it comes to the CAF Champions League, they've already then qualified then for the quarterfinals. So it's going to be interesting then to see who do they draw then within the CAF Champions League quarterfinals, and also then how then they fare out within the Nedbank Cup. But I do think that they will win the Nedbank Cup, and it's pretty obvious that with the DStv Premiership that they've won that as well. But the interesting one then becomes the CAF Champions League. So with Mamelodi Sundowns, then we do know that over recent years they have been falling short, reaching the quarterfinals and not being able then to surpass that and being able to go on and add the second star. So when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side, they look very, very good and they looked poised to actually go on and get their second star. However, that remains to be seen. But on today's episode then, it is a tactical feature focus where we have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns, the 442 Diamond, the key players, and what has really made them become so dominant in recent times. So when you have a look at it then, this Mamelodi Sundowns side then do then play with a 442 Diamond. That is their standard shape and that is their standard formation. So in goals then, you do have Ronan Williams. Have a look at Ronan Williams. He's been one of their better performers, if not their best performer. So Ronan Williams has been very key for this Mamelodi Sundowns side with regards to then how then they look to build up. So he's given them a different dimension within build-up phase, and also then the saves that he makes and how he's able to ensure that he's able to keep Sundowns in games, and also being able then to ensure that he offers that leadership from the back. When you move on then right along and have a look at the centre-back pairing. So as the left-sided centre-back, they do have Toby Mvala, who's been absolutely phenomenal for this Mamelodi Sundowns side. Very solid at the heart of defence, alongside Grant Kekana. They've formed a very, very formidable partnership, and I think a partnership that many would have not expected at the beginning of the season, but the pair of them now look very solid, and I would say that they're one of the best defensive partnerships on the continent. When you move on then right along, at right back, they do have Khuliso Mudau as the defensive midfielder. They do have Tebogo Mokwena as a lone pivot, and then as their left back, they do have Modiba. So on this board, as you can see, Modiba is a lot more tucked in, because then for this Mamelodi Sundowns side, he does play as an inverted fullback. So the reason he plays as an inverted fullback for this Mamelodi Sundowns side is because he offers them an extra layer within build-up and an extra pass within midfield. So the way that this Mamelodi Sundowns side is looking to play, they are looking then to invert their left-sided fullback, who is Modiba, and this is what makes him then quite a special player within this side. Do know that, okay, he does has his disadvantages from a 1v1 defensive perspective, but when you look at his strength and you look at what he contributes to this Mamelodi Sundowns side and the value that he possesses as an inverted fullback, that outweighs then the disadvantages. When you move on then right along, when you have a look at the two number 8s, so you do have Mayama and then you do have Allende. So with these two then, they've been very key for this Mamelodi Sundowns side within the heart of midfield, especially then when it comes to ensuring that Mamelodi Sundowns is able to protect, progress and circulate the ball. With the pair of them then, they do tend to interchange a lot. So it isn't fixated that you'll always find Mayama occupying the left side of the diamond. So they do tend to swap a lot. And also when you look at the pair of them then, without the ball, they become very key for this Mamelodi Sundowns side, because within the diamond, it is quite a compact and very narrow system. So as you can see, there's 8 players which occupy the 3 central channels, and then the natural width, the natural source of width does come from the fullbacks. So that is being Modiba, but I did mention Modiba spends a lot of his time tucked in within that left-sided half space within the central channel as well. And then you've got Mudau. So it becomes key then that these two fullbacks are assisted whenever then opposition do look to overload the wide areas. When you move on then right along and have a look at another aspect that makes them key. So because then this 4-4-2 diamond is not your traditional 4-4-2 diamond with regards to the movement patterns and the passing patterns, it becomes quite key then with regards to how they look to interchange and how fluid they are with regards to rotations and positional play as well. Because sometimes you will see them then looking to offer that width whenever then their two fullbacks are actually tucked in and inverted within the heart of midfield. So sometimes you will see them offering width. Sometimes you will see them occupying pockets of space further up the pitch, also looking to break into the box. When you move on then right along and have a look at the next player. So you do have Themba Zwane, who sits then at the top of the diamond. So when you have a look at Themba Zwane then, this is their talisman, this is their playmaker. He's the one that gets them to play. And what Themba Zwane offers you then is that lateral movement in between the opposition lines with regards to then how he's looking to influence play. We do know that he's a very creative player, very skillful, and a player then who also has an eye for goal as well. When you move on then right along, you do have Mailula, and then you've got Shalulile as well. So this has been Mamelodi Sundowns' strongest 11 within the diamond, and with regards to how then they've been looking to impose themselves, you know, and also having had a look at the individuals, do know that Mailula has been doing so well for this Mamelodi Sundowns side. He scored a lot of goals, and he's also been able to create goals as well. You do then also have Shalulile, who's come in and who's also then in red hot form. However, let's then have a look at it then with regards to how does this Mamelodi Sundowns side look in possession and what are they trying to do. So when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side, I did mention that Ronwen Williams is very key then with regards to how Mamelodi Sundowns look to build up. So what you do see then within their build-up scheme is that a lot of the times within their build-up scheme, what you will see then is sort of, you see this shape. So the centre-backs start very, very deep within the 6-yard. And as opposed to seeing the traditional way of goalkeepers passing the ball to the centre-back and looking to progress play, a lot of the times what you do see from this Mamelodi Sundowns side is Mtobi Mvala on the ball in the 6-yard. He looks then to play to Ronwen Williams, and they look to progress from there. So the question then you might ask yourself is, why do teams build up in this fashion? Because this is something that is becoming popular world over. We're also starting to see it within our league with regards to other teams as well. But Sundowns are the most successful with regards to this build-up scheme. So the reason why a team would be looking to do this. So when you have a look at it, let me just add opposition. When you have a look at how teams look to press. So when teams look to press, they tend to divide the field into two from a vertical perspective. So going that way, they divide it into the right side and the left side. So when teams do this, they tend to look to force the opposition and the build-up scheme into a favorable pocket of space where they could look to win the ball back. So a lot of the times what you will see, if the goalkeeper does pass to the centre-back, you'd see the striker looking then to ensure that he can close off that passing lane back into the goalkeeper, which then forces them this side, and then the opposition, they'll all pick man on man. So what you will see then is the opposition just going sort of like man on man on this side. So ensuring then that the team in build-up can't look to build up seamlessly. So a lot of options then will be closed. And then a lot of times what you will see then is either a forced pass, which becomes a turnover, or the opposition then looking to go long. But when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side and why they do what they do within the build-up scheme. So instead then of Ronwen Williams looking to pass to Mtobi Mvala, what you would see then is that Mvala would be looking to pass to Ronwen Williams. When that ball is played to Ronwen Williams, so some teams look to press Mamelodi Sundowns with two. Those are very brave teams that look to press Mamelodi Sundowns with two. So when they do look to press them with two, what you would see then is you'll hardly see a team that will be looking then to press the goalkeeper directly like that. Because then when he does that, then it's very easy then for Rulani Williams to just play that pass. And already then they've beaten the press of 2 and then they're out. So when that ball from Toby Mbala goes into Rulani Williams, this is designed then to disorientate the press. So what this then does is that it gives the opposition strikers and the opposition pressers indecision. So now they're not sure which side Mamelodi Sundowns is going to build up on. So by virtue of this, they then gain initiative and control within the build-up scheme, which becomes very important then when it comes to pressing scheme versus build-up scheme. So in this regard, then, they can go any direction. So Rulani Williams can look to play central, or he can look to play to the side, or he can look to play that chip pass, or he can look then to play a progressive pass into midfield where he's looking for one of his 8s. We did see Rulani Williams do this very well against Al Ahly, where then they scored that 5th goal with a passing sequence with just a couple of passes, where then Rulani Williams gets it, it's into midfield, it's one touch, into Shalile then scores. Because then of how well they've mastered then their build-up schemes, they also do then have a couple of variations, but in most cases, that is how they're looking to build up. And then when you move on then right along, you would have Rulani Mokwena, who would be just behind the first line of pressure. And then you do have Mudiba, who's looking to invert. But when Mudiba does look to invert, Mokwena would normally then move to the right side of half space, and then you'd see somewhat of that. And you'd sort of have them pushed out. So the rest of the numbers would be pushed out, and it would look somewhat of that. So it becomes then sort of this 3-2 build-up scheme with regards to how then they're looking to build up and progress the ball. So when you move on then, right along and have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side with regards to the offensive scheme. So with regards to the offensive scheme, there are multiple ways in which they look when they do occupy the ball within the opposition half. So let's just move them up. So with Rulani Williams, it's also key to note that he also then does occupy such pockets of space where then he becomes key in build-up. So he's not afraid to come out and start initiating the build-up for Mamelodi Sundowns. And another key aspect of this is because then when you do look to dominate the ball, it is always very important that you always have that one option free. So with Sundowns then, all 11 players are comfortable in possession. So it means that at all times then, it does then ensure that they've got an extra player who's comfortable on the ball, because the opposition keeper is never going to press. So when you have a look at this Sundowns side, what you would see from them then, a lot of the times then, it does become a 2-3-5 offensive scheme. So you'd have, just push the center backs there. So what you would see then from this Mamelodi Sundowns side, a lot of the times you'd see somewhat of that shape. If the ball then is on the right-hand side, what you would see then is them looking to tuck in a lot more. So a lot of the times from this Mamelodi Sundowns side, you do see somewhat of this shape in possession. It does become a 2-3-5. And now the interesting thing then about the offensive scheme is that it is quite fluid and quite dynamic. So you'll always have the 2 center-backs there. You'll always have Rulani Mokwena there. But then when it comes to these players who occupy these deep pockets of space within the half spaces, it changes. So sometimes you can have Mudiba, who's looked to invert. Then sometimes you'll have an 8 on this side. So if the 8 on this side is Allende, for example, you'd have Allende there, and then you'd have Mudau looking then to offer the width. Sometimes what you will see is Mudau, who has inverted, then you'd see Allende within that wide channel. And even then on the left-hand side as well. But in most cases, what you do see on the right-hand side is Mudau looking to offer that width. On the left-hand side, there's a lot of rotations with regards to who looks to offer that width, because then you do have a player like Mayema who can look to offer that width on the left-hand side for this Mamelodi Sundowns side. And sometimes then you do have Mudiba, if he does go on the overlap and this pocket of space is occupied, then you will see him then being able to intelligently occupy that wide channel. So with Mudiba then, very flexible, very dynamic. So he isn't just going to invert a lot of the times. Sometimes he does go within the wide channel, and he does also then deliver very good balls into the box. He is also quite key, as he is then their main set piece taker with regards to corners and free kicks as well. Then you also then have Tembazwane, who tends to drift all over the place. So sometimes he does drift into the wide areas. Sometimes you would have Mailula, who would drift to the wide area. But mostly Mailula and Shalile do tend to occupy the central pockets of space in the central channels. And then you'd have either the 8s or you'd have the fullbacks, or you'd have Zwane, who's the 10, at the tip of the diamond, looking then to occupy the wide channel. Sometimes what you would see then is even a 2-2-6 offensive scheme, where then, for example, you have Modiba, who's inverted, then you've got Mokwena, and they're able to create this defensive block where then they've got 4 numbers behind the ball. Sometimes then, like I did mention, it does become a 2-3-5. So it is quite key then with regards to their rest defense. And at all times, they always look to have at least 4 to 5 players behind the ball, being able to ensure then that they can manage those offensive transitions and counterattacks from the opposition. But when you move on then right along and have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side then without the ball, what do they look like? So when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side without the ball then, and you have a look at the diamond, what does it become? So this diamond then, quite interestingly, it then becomes a 4-3-1-2. So when you have a look at the diamond without the ball, this is what the diamond tends to look like. It does become very compact. So then the 2 lines of 3 being that first line of 3 and then that second line of 3 become very key with regards to the work that they look to put in, with regards to applying pressure on the opposition and ensuring that the opposition can't play, because from a pressing perspective, they are quite aggressive. So they're always looking to force the opposition long. So when they do look to press, what you would see then is Sundowns, is that the 2 strikers in Mailula and Shalile would be looking to occupy the 2 centre-backs. You'd have Zwane standing on the pivot, and then that's what you would see. If the ball then does go into the wide area, what you would see is one of the 8s then having to jump to combat that. So within this diamond then, the importance of the 8s without the ball and the work that they put in from a defensive perspective becomes a lot, because then whenever the ball goes into the wide area, it is the 8 that looks then to combat that situation and look to assist. And when they sit deep then within their own half, what does it look like? So they become very compact with regards to managing the space and ensuring that from a lateral and vertical perspective, teams aren't able to penetrate them in between the lines, where then they're looking to find those pockets of space. But you barely see this Sundown side without the ball, as they're very dominant in that regard. So what you do see then is that Mamelodi Sundowns then would be looking to sort of sit in that shape, where it becomes a 4-3-1, and then you've got 2 there. Can also become a 4-3-3 if Zwane does step up into that line. It also then has a line of 3 up there. So that's what it looks like then without the ball. Did mention the 8s become quite key with regards to assisting the fullbacks, because what you do see then is that opposition do tend to overload the wide areas, looking to penetrate. Also considering then that Modiba 1v1 isn't the strongest. So what teams do look to do then is look to overload the wide area, and you'd have an aggressive fullback looking to overlap. That's where then one of the 8s become very key with regards to breaking out from the diamond and looking to assist. When you look at their set pieces then, I did mention that Aubrey Modiba was quite key with regards to that, because he is very good in that regard with regards to his technical ability. So Aubrey Modiba is the key set piece taker for this Mamelodi Sundowns side. So from corners, that is out swingers, in swingers, direct free kicks as well. You also have Mayema and you've got Alende as well, who are quite key in that regard. And then when you look at the weaknesses, because every strong team has weaknesses. So when you have a look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side and you have a look at some of their weaknesses, so within the wide areas, that is a weakness, especially then when you have a look at Aubrey Modiba, and when teams are able to successfully overload the wide areas, they are able then to put balls into the box. Also then, when you look at set pieces, they do struggle then to defend set pieces. So that is Mamelodi Sundowns side then with regards to their 4-4-2 diamond, what they do very well, and also some of the weaknesses, their key players, and how dominant they've been then within the CAF Champions League, within the DStv Premiership, and within the Nedbank Cup. So, ladies and gentlemen, do let me know at home, do you think that Mamelodi Sundowns will go on all the way and win the CAF Champions League? And do you think then that they'll go on the way, all the way within the Nedbank Cup as well? Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Liolo. Signing out.